All right, so I'm going to start the live in just 2 minutes, and today the topic is really about hormones. So we're just going to start like in 1 minute. We're just going to have it's going to be probably around 20 minutes, and I hope it will be very informative today. So I'm just going to check that the mic is working. And yeah, we're just going to get started. And yes, it is time. So so what if your hormones were not the problem, but simply a system that is no longer balanced? After 40, many women think it's hormonal. There's nothing I can do. But the reality is your hormone operates within a precise system. And when that system is out of balance, that's when we start to experience fatigue, weight gain, irregular periods, and mood swings. That's when we start seeing those things. So today I'm going to show you how to naturally rebalance your hormones by first understanding how they actually work. So, hi everyone. My name is Liliane Roux. I am a health coach and a personal trainer. I'm actually a holistic coach with a really a big interest on lifestyle. I'm also a certified Ayurveda instructor, a certified functional breathing instructor. And really, I'm extremely passionate about helping people actually feel better and thrive. But at the end of the day, I'm all about helping women regain their energy, health, and balance after 40 so that they can be healthy over 50. So today we're going to talk about a key topic, obviously, and that is female hormones, because the real problem is not your hormones themselves, it's their balance. Now, I just want to be clear, this is not a medical advice. The content I'm sharing today is very educational, right? But the first part, what is really critical to actually balance your hormones, you first need to understand how they work. And I have to say, myself, I'm 48 years old. It's only when I started having a certain kind of imbalances that I really started to understand, trying to understand my hormones. And what I realized is most women don't really understand the way their menstrual cycle works. So, what I want to do before even talking about nutrition, it's let's have a look at the menstrual cycle and try to understand how our hormones, how they work before we go any further. So the menstrual cycle obviously lasts on average 28 days, and it is controlled by several hormones. The first one is the FSH, which is the follicle stimulating hormone, and actually that stimulates the follicles. We have the LH, which is the luteinizing hormone. It triggers ovulation. We have estrogen, prepares the uterus, that's critical, and progesterone that stabilizes and maintains the uterine lining. So obviously around day 14, that's when ovulation occurs. And That's really simple. The follicle that released the egg becomes the corpus luteum, and it acts as a temporary hormonal gland, and it produces progesterone. So as we said, the progesterone stabilizes and maintains the uterine lining. So if there is no fertilization, progesterone drops, and that's when you have your menses. And then you have another cycle that starts again. So really want to make sure that we really understand the menstrual cycle. So if we look at it just one more time, estrogen rises during the first half of the cycle, and this is what we call the follicular phase, and it thickens the uterine lining and prepares the body for ovulation. And this is often increases energy, motivation, and mental clarity. Now, we touch on the corpus luteum, which is the follicle that matures in the ovary. It contains the egg. After the release of the egg mid-cycle, during the surge of the LH, the empty follicle transforms into a yellow structure, which is called the corpus luteum. And that progesterone is the hormone that protects the body for a potential pregnancy. And it's produced by that corpus luteum. As a result, progesterone rises during the second half of the cycle, and that's the luteal phase. So we have pretty much four hormones that are critical. The follicle stimulating hormones, it's kind of produced by the pituitary gland in the brain, and its main role is to stimulate the growth of the ovarian follicle, which contains the egg. So that stimulates the egg development in the ovaries. It initiates the menstrual cycle, and it promotes estrogen production. We spoke about the LH, luteinizing hormones. The LH is also produced by the pituitary gland, so in the brain, and it triggers ovulation. It stimulates progesterone, and it supports the formation of that corpus luteum. So once we've said that, we kind of understand pretty much the menstrual cycle. So during the cycle, mid-cycle, estrogen reaches a high level that triggers the LH surge, which causes the ovulation. That's when we have the release of the egg, obviously mid-cycle. So if we really summarize and if we try to simplify, we have three different parts of the cycle. We have the follicular phase, which is when the estrogen rise. We have the ovulation with the LH surge, and that releases the egg. And we have the luteal phase, which is the progesterone dominant. So it is important to understand, because the hormonal balance is actually the balance between two hormones, estrogen and progesterone. And actually, the imbalance is really very often caused by estrogen dominance. That is what we tend to observe, and that dominance usually causes the greatest challenge for women. And this is really common to have excess estrogen. And the typical symptoms are obviously difficulty losing weight, painful or heavy periods, mood swings, fatigue, low libido, and even water retention and constipation. So too much estrogen is typical, and sometimes it's not enough progesterone, but it's about the balance. And those imbalances, especially too much estrogen, can be linked to fibroids, endometriosis, polycystic ovary syndromes. And so it's not hormonal. It's not just hormonal, it's a balance issue. Now, when we talk about all of that, now that we understand, let's talk a bit about nutrition. And this is the most beautiful part, because we have more ability to have an impact on our health based on how we fuel our bodies, right? And this is where I'm extremely passionate. So the liver plays a critical role, and most women don't realize that. The liver is critical because it processes hormone and it helps eliminate excess estrogen. So if the liver is overloaded, estrogen accumulates, and obviously the imbalance worsens. So you cannot balance your hormones without supporting your liver. And a big part of the conversation today, it's going to be around the things that we can do to actually, I like to say, detoxify the liver, right? So we can do that by consuming the right foods, and some foods are actually going to be uh, really powerful. So in terms of food, obviously, consuming, increasing the amount of fiber, and that's going to be achieved with more vegetables. Actually, consuming as well whole grains, critical. Cruciferous vegetables, because they will support the liver function. It is important to reduce coffee, alcohol, sugar, because they really disrupt hormonal balance, and limit saturated fats, because they can actually promote excess estrogen. But what we can do is really eat healthy fats, so omega 3s, fish, oily fish, flaxseed oil, because they really help balance hormones and what we call the prostaglandins. We have to look at key nutrients like B6, B12, uh, magnesium, zinc, chromium. And to support the liver, we have to look at turmeric, dandelion, artichoke. So the message is like hormonal balance really starts on our plates, and this is something we are totally in control of, and that's something most women tend to not realize. So we have different cases. As we said, a lot of women suffer from insulin resistance, uh, polycystic ovary syndrome. We have a lot of hormonal imbalance with excess male hormones like testosterone, because women also produce them in small amounts in the ovaries and adrenal glands. And typically, the symptoms are weight gain, acne, irregular periods, insulin resistance. So, for that, it is super important to avoid refined sugars, adapt a low glycemic index diet, and that should be including foods with a low GI. So, what we mean by that is non starchy vegetables, and they should be your foundation, right? So, broccoli, spinach, kale, courgette, aubergine, peppers, mushrooms, green beans. A lot of the time, we forget that fruits tend to be very high in, these tend to have a high glycemic index. So, we should think about consuming low GI fruits like berries, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, apples, pears, cherries, but avoid as well large portion of high sugar fruits like mangoes, pineapples. So usually some of the tropical fruits tend to be rich, and tend to have high GI. Whole grains are great because they are kind of a slow release carbs. So oat, quinoa, brown rice, buckwheat, they provide steady energy. They are rich in fiber, so that really slows the glucose spikes. Legumes, obviously, are your metabolic allies. So lentils, chickpeas, black beans, kidney beans are great because they have a very low GI and high fiber and protein. So the two really help to stabilize blood sugar. And protein, obviously, which is kind of your essential for blood sugar control. And obviously, we try to include those at least for 2 meals out of 3. So we think about our eggs, our fish, especially oily fish like salmon, sardines, your chicken, turkey, your Greek yogurt, your tofu or tempeh, because they slow glucose absorption and they reduce cravings. Best sources as well can be your olive oil, avocado, nuts, seeds, obviously chia seeds, flax seed. They have no impact on blood sugar. They improve your insulin sensitivity and they really support your hormones, especially for women over 40. Now, the foods that you really want to limit and that are kind of your high GI traps are your white bread, white pasta, sugary cereals, fruit juices, pastries, biscuits, all the processed foods usually are full of sugar and they actually spike insulin and that increase fat storage and energy crashes. So really, what you need to remember today is that your hormones are not your enemy. They actually respond to your lifestyle. So after 40, it's not about willpower. It's not about dieting. It's about the balance. And it's about having a system that really helps you achieve that. So that's why I kind of created a system that's called Healthy Over 50. So that's kind of the what I call my HO50, which is a method. And that method is a system that is based on nutrition, metabolism, movement, recovery, mindset. Obviously, today we did not talk about exercise, movement, but it's important because without a balance, nothing lasts. So we need a system that really works and that we can almost replicate every day. And that's the way to find the balance. It's about evolving, it's about adjusting the lifestyle uh, so that we find that balance. And everybody can have a different balance. So there is not a system that will work for everyone the same way. But yeah, so that was a super quick live. I hope you guys find it helpful. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. So perfect. Under 30 minutes. That was my goal. Thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to the next one next week.